Hello, everyone. It is July 30th, and Alexandra Rodriguez has a new video. And this is like my third time trying to record this. The first time my laptop died when I was just like a minute in. The second time I got through the whole thing. And as I'm uploading it, I'm rewatching it just to double check that everything looks good. And the audio from her video is just like so messed up, like really quiet and really, really echoey. So we are trying this again. If the audio is still a little effed up, we are going to keep going with it, to be honest. I'm probably just going to upload it because I cannot watch this again, and I don't know why the audio is doing that. Anyway, we have got a truth video. We were due for one, right? We got the white shirt, the no makeup, the hair pulled back, the titles in all lowercase. I mean, it's hitting every single check mark. So this one, though, is called The Truth About My Father. And I don't think many of us were actually expecting her to get on and make a video like this. So while I can poke fun at just, how stereotypical, cliche, and transparent this type of video all is, we have been wanting her to address this. So I'm going to go in and try to have an open mind, even though I have watched this already. But I do approach it with an open mind and see what she has to say.
Today's video is not easy for me to make, but I know it's necessary. I always promise to be real with you, and that
I think it's just her, guys. I have I'm going to put my volume up all the way. She's speaking very quietly, very demure, very cutesy. So it may be hard to hear the parts that she's speaking, and I really do apologize about that. Maybe I can put on closed captions. There we go. And she is also sped up, but let's put her down a little bit. 1.25, how about? Okay.
includes taking ownership of things that are difficult, painful, and deeply personal. Recently, parts of my past resurfaced online, a letter I wrote years ago in support of my father and photos of him at my wedding.
I immediately take issue with this statement that she wrote the letters years ago. First of all, she's only in this video addresses one letter when she did write two, as far as I recall. She wrote one that was definitely years ago, like 10 plus years ago. And then she wrote one in 2023. It was dated February 2023, which is really not that long ago. And either way, I feel like people try to use this aspect of time to diminish or distract from what they actually did at that time. It's like it was so long ago, and they try to use this idea of just being young or a different context, or it was just, I've changed since then, to distract from what they actually done. In this case, it would be having a relationship with her convicted sexual predator felon of a father and writing letters to a judge in support of him. I believe one might have been for like early release from prison, and one was to get off parole early. You guys can correct me. I can't remember the exact context in which she wrote the letters, but it was something like that, written to a judge, and she showed her support of him and really didn't acknowledge the fact that he had actually committed the crimes that he did. So immediately, I just have an issue with how she's approaching this.
Back in 2021. And I understand how upsetting and confusing this has been for many people. And I just want to speak honestly from the heart and provide the full context.
While I do appreciate her sitting down, and as she says, she's going to be honest and provide full context for us, the timing is super weird. I feel like I'm getting whiplash right now because we just got done with all these copyright strikes and things on a variety of channels from her, which in my opinion, she did in an effort to take down a lot of content about her, including that about her father, and to try to maybe scare channels into not making videos about her so that people would stop talking about her father and the letters that she wrote about her weight, about her child, about everything. And I think that backfired astronomically on her. All it's really done is actually draw more attention to it. It's lit a fire under people's ass even more to just kind of continue speaking their truth and sharing their commentary and their criticism of her content and the things in her life that are very publicly available. And I think because of that backfire, now she has to sit and do this video, right? People have been talking about this for a while, and those comments were ignored, deleted, and so on. She's doing it now. She's being honest now because her back's against the wall.
So, starting from the beginning, my parents divorced when I was very young, and my father left my life almost entirely when I was just 2 years old. He moved away and started a new family, and I saw him maybe once a year, if that. He wasn't really a father to me, and his absence left deep emotional scars that I've carried with me throughout my life into adulthood.
I'm sure she did, and I mean that sincerely. The wounds that we get as children do follow you into adulthood. They can follow you for the rest of your life if you are not proactive in finding the support you need and the coping skills that you need. And I do not doubt for a second that what happened with her parents divorcing and her father just not being present for her as a child, especially, definitely wounded her. And so I want to be very clear. I do feel for her in that regard, and I would never hold that against her. What I do hold against is then maybe using that as a crutch for things moving forward rather than, eventually we have to take accountability. We aren't responsible for what happened to us, but we are accountable for how we move forward, even with those emotional wounds. But let's see what she has to say.
When I was a young teenager, I found out my father had been arrested and sentenced to 8 years in prison for having sex with a 15-year-old.
One thing to be very clear about, and I do think that words matter here. While literally, yes, he had sex with a 15-year-old, he was arrested and sentenced to prison for felony sexual assault against a minor. He sexually assaulted a minor. He raped a minor. Okay? I feel like in our society, saying you had sex with someone implies mutual consent, and a 15-year-old cannot consent. So an adult man doing that to a 15-year-old is sexual assault. It is rape. And I'm not really I'm not using the essay. I'm not ard, I get why people do that. I don't make money on my channel, and I'm not worried about making money on my channel. So I'm just going, full balls to the wall with the language here. That's what he did. And I think using terms like this is another way that people like to distance themselves and distance the perpetrator from the crime. It's a very interesting thing. Like if you watch even certain sexual predators, they will use language like that, calling like a young girl a young woman, saying that they slept with her or whatever it might be. That's to distance themselves from what really happened, which is that you preyed upon a vulnerable child and you raped them.
It was horrifying, traumatic, and incredibly hard to process.
Again, I do not doubt that. I don't doubt for a second that that would be extremely traumatic for her, and I don't hold that against her, and I don't think anybody does. Even the hardest, quote, haters against her, the reactors, whatever, no one would ever blame her for the sins, the actions of her father. That's not her fault. And I want to make that very clear that that's where I stand. My issue is about the letters, and we'll talk more about that when we get there.
In the midst of all of that, once he was in prison, he began reaching out to me. He manipulated me, telling me that he was on medication, that he wasn't in his right mind, that he truly didn't understand what he was doing, and that he felt remorse. And as a teenage girl who had always longed for a relationship with her dad, I desperately wanted to believe him.
I could see this. I've long speculated that, and others as well, like I feel like we pretty much get the picture that he went to prison and he needed someone to rely on. He needed, more connection to the outside world. He needed emotional support. Maybe it was other resources like money for commissary. I don't know. Things like that. So what does he do? He comes crawling back to manipulate his daughter that he has not been in her life, not been a present father figure for, so that he gets what he needs. This just shows what a piece of shit this guy really is. From start to finish, he just sucks. to put it very, very simply and very lightly. And I do feel for her. And I have to acknowledge that there is some nuance here with what she went through with her relationship with him as a young child, and then this traumatic situation. And if you're a young person, I don't know exactly how old she was, maybe 14 to 16, you then have this person that you want their approval, you want their love, and they come to you, and now they're giving you this attention and they need you. And they're telling you they feel bad and they're telling you these excuses. I have to be real. I sort of see how that could really manipulate a young person like Alex at the time. But there is more about this to come. It starts to shift as you get older, and there will be more to talk about in a minute.
I was desperate for a connection with the man who had abandoned me, and that longing just kind of clouded my judgment. I began
See, again, I can see that. I really can.
communicating with him regularly for the first time in my life. He told me he wanted to be in my life, and I held on to that hope even when I knew I shouldn't have. When he was
That's really sad. And through all this, I just wonder where the hell her family was. Where were the adults in her life that should have guided her through this in a different way? But we know what it is. Her mother seemingly supports her father. I believe her grandfather, her maternal grandfather, also wrote letters in support of her father. And so I just feel like some of the closest people, by her admission, her grandparents were like her second parents. Her mom, she says she's very close to her mom. It seems that those people were not there to tell her that what he did was wrong, that he does not deserve her time, her attention, nothing, and that he is a criminal, like a violent criminal and a monster. And I think that's really sad. Like, I really do. I feel for her because I just think to my own mom, and if the tables were turned, first of all, my father was like an angel on earth and would never, but God forbid he did. My mother would not have allowed that relationship to flourish. She just wouldn't have. It would be a no-go because it would be for the best. Even if it took me a while to understand it, into adulthood and to really like mature and fully develop my brain, then I would get it, and I'd be so grateful for her being there to shield me from that. And it's sad that she didn't have that.
released from prison, I made a choice that I will always regret. I allowed him to attend my wedding. I also wrote a letter to the judge reflecting my own limited and manipulated experience.
I have to wonder what exactly she regrets about allowing him to come to her wedding. She doesn't get into this exactly. And I'm like, I feel like she's alluding to the fact that she now regrets it because she understands his crimes, which again, we will talk about in a minute. But it's like, do you regret that he was there because you don't support him anymore? Do you regret because there were children there and maybe you weren't honest with the other parents about who he was? Do you regret that you got caught, that people saw those photos and a lot of this came to light? Like, what exactly is it? Because you were an adult at this point and you made that choice. She also again references the letter and says that she regrets writing the letter. From my understanding, there were two letters, but I feel that she's referring to the letter in 2023 because she's sort of tying it into this time period with her wedding, which was in 2021. So those two things would have happened a bit closer together. But again, that letter was written like 2 years after the wedding. So I just feel like she has demonstrated throughout the better part of a decade at this point, if not more, that she has been in support of her father and has chosen to really disregard or downplay his crimes.
I want to be so clear in this video. I was not fully aware of the details of his crime, and that's on me. I was not thinking clearly.
This is what got me here. To say you weren't fully aware of the details of his crime. My question is how? How? Humans, in my opinion, are curious by nature. And while I'm speaking with bias about myself, I do think that if anyone in my life, were even strangers, dude, like I'm a true crime person, right? They're arrested for something, especially something like this, I need to know the facts. And especially if I'm going to be writing a letter in support or not of that person, I need to understand fully everything that went on, you know? As morbid as that might sound, you need to know, because how did you write that letter then without knowing what the hell he did? And in this day and age, I mean, there are resources upon resources available to figure it out. Strangers on the internet figured it out, and it didn't take too much work. So I think that reflects on Alex's limited intelligence to not stop and gather the facts before acting, if she's being truthful about this too. I think that's another thing that we can agree that we've seen is people try to then play dumb, try to claim they didn't know. I'm not saying that she's being dishonest about this. I just find it so hard to believe that you wouldn't look into it, especially this involved her father and an adopted sister. This isn't some really disconnected person from you that maybe you just don't care to know like all the details or whatever. This is so close to home for her, right?
I was vulnerable, and that's not an excuse. I was wrong. And even though I've long since cut ties, once I gained that clarity and stepped back from the manipulation, I understand that the pain this has resurfaced is valid.
I appreciate hearing her say that she was wrong. She is definitely trying to say that she was manipulated. She was young, her judgment was clouded, but she does say that's not an excuse. And I do believe that you can take accountability while still providing context for your decisions. And that isn't always meant to excuse yourself. So, in all honesty, I am trying to give her a bit of the benefit of the doubt here. I think that we have to look at things with nuance. I think it's very black and white whether you support a predator or not. I think it is wrong to do that, without a doubt, no ifs, ands, or buts. And it is right to disavow them and to not support them. With that being said, I think when she was super young and this happened, I can see how she could have been led astray and been manipulated by him, especially if she didn't have adults in her life looking out for her best interest. But as she got older and she still proceeded to build a relationship with him, she matured. You would think, your frontal cortex and everything starts to fully develop. And she still chose to have that relationship. She still chose to not lead with empathy for the victim, who she does not address once in this video. And she still chose to not, I guess, look up the details of the crime. So while she also is claiming that she cut ties with her father at this point, I don't know if I believe that, you guys. I really don't. She's saying that though. But in the moment, what she did was write letters to a judge to advocate for his release, to advocate for his early parole, so that he could be walking around a free man with all the rest of us in the open world. And that's what matters. Those letters matter. That's why they ask people to write them. And she did that allegedly without knowing the full facts of his crimes, and sat and wrote these awful things in this letter about how wonderful of a person he is and the blessing that this was in disguise for their relationship, and not once acknowledging the trauma and the hurt that he imposed on so many people, not least of all her adopted sister that was the victim of his crimes.
And I take full accountability for the choices that I made in that period of my life, even though I made them under emotional pressure and just this deep desire for love and connection.
Again, I can see that. I could see maybe the original letter that was written a long, long, long time ago. If you're like 16, 17, I can see her explaining this away. But those letters and that support continued well into her adulthood. And that's where I start to take issue with it. This isn't just someone addressing something that she did once when she was 17 and then quickly learned from it and grew and cut off that relationship. This has seemingly gone on well into the 2020s. In my opinion, I think she still has a relationship with him. That is just my opinion. So, I just not really buying that.
But Let me be crystal clear. I do not condone, excuse, or support his actions. What he did was wrong, period. And if I could go back, I would have never written that letter. I would have never let him into such a sacred and personal moment in my life, but I can't go back.
I'm glad to hear her admonish him now and say that he was wrong and that she doesn't condone his actions. But the truth is, you wrote a letter in 2023, only 2 years ago, that did basically condone his actions. You didn't even really acknowledge it. You act as if he never even did these things. You act as if you've actually used the phrase that it happened to him and that he has since flourished despite all of that, despite, all the obstacles against him, when it's his own sick, disgusting choices that he made. And that to me is what mattered. Your intention may have not been that, I guess, but the outcome is that judge took that into account, right?
What I can do is acknowledge my mistake, learn from it, and take accountability for it. I've done so much work to process the trauma, not just from what he did, but from his lifelong absence, and to establish boundaries that I should have had from the start.
I am glad if she's being honest again about doing the work to address the trauma from his absence in her life and from what he did, she says. Again, I feel she does distance herself a lot from the severity and the reality of the crime that he committed. And again, we really don't hear anything about the feeling of trauma that the victim must have encountered. I do apologize if you don't like the use of the word victim in this context. I know some people don't, but that's what I prefer to use and what I'm going to use in this video. This is a lot about her. And I know that this is, it's Alex's video and Alex can really only speak on Alex's experience, but this does feel very focused on her. I would have appreciated hearing something about that other person involved on the other end of his crime, and how she feels that what Alex has done might have impacted that person, and what her father most definitely did do and was convicted of, how that impacted his victim. What is the work that she's had to do for all these years? Meanwhile, you were sitting here kikiing with him out in Fort Lauderdale and writing letters to a judge that it's a blessing in disguise and he got his goddamn PhD. So, yay, model citizen, let him out, let him off parole.
To anyone who has been hurt, triggered, or disappointed by seeing these things, you have every right to feel that way. And I am so sorry. My choices in the past gave space to someone who should have never had it. Being in the public eye means that even in the most private, painful parts of your life, they can come to light. And that's exactly what's happened here. I never wanted this part of my story to be public because it's deeply personal.
This is true, and I understand that. I do think being a public figure or not, you are entitled to privacy. I don't think that everyone is entitled to every bit of your life, but this is public. This isn't just that he committed these crimes and was sent to prison and their relationship ended there. If that were the case, no one would really care. It probably would have been found out and still would be talked about a bit, but not to the degree that it is. The reason that all of this has happened is solely because of the letters and the support that she has shown him and the way that she has totally disparaged and disregarded victims of sexual assault through her actions well into adulthood. That's it. Her comments in this video, I looked at them in my original video that I made on this. I don't know if we'll take another look because they frankly piss me off, because it's just full of stands saying that this is private and how dare people feel entitled to this and they feel so sorry she had to make this. I don't really, because it's about the letters. It's not just about something her father did and she had nothing to do with it and she never supported him and she washed her hands of him and she walked away. In that case, if it was still coming up and people were still talking shit, I would get it. I would feel that she didn't need to address it and it sucks that she has to, but that's not the issue. And I don't know why her rabid fans do not get that through their heads. People that are watching public figures deserve to know who they are supporting. And when there are publicly available controversies surrounding that person, they are within their rights to discuss it, to talk about it, and to want it addressed. And that is my opinion.
I also recognize that when it becomes public, silence isn't an option.
Okay, so she's sort of acknowledging that, and I appreciate that. However, she did just try to silence a whole bunch of reaction channels. So again, I feel that this is just sort of like her last ditch effort. She never would have made this video if the copyright thing didn't totally backfire on her.
This has been a painful wake-up call about the importance of boundaries, transparency, and emotional clarity. I've learned from it, and I really hope that by sharing this, I can offer honesty, closure, and clarity moving forward. I am so sorry for the pain this has caused. Thank you for those who have shown compassion and giving me the space to explain. And thank you so much for listening.
So this video definitely sounds, a bit scripted, rehearsed to me, but I honestly can't blame her too much for that. This is a highly emotional video, even for her to make. So I understand wanting to come on and be able to get your thoughts out quickly and succinctly, but I do think that this sort of just continued to water down sort of what he did and what she did and water down the significance of it, so that again, anyone coming in and watching it who doesn't have the full backstory would just think that this is some poor woman who's been bullied into discussing these horrible things that her father did that she played no part in, and that she was just, an innocent little girl who got manipulated by him. And it's deeper than that. It really is a lot deeper than that. And I don't think that this totally, this kind of scratched the surface of it. It was better than nothing. I'll give her that. I do appreciate that she did take some accountability. Whether she meant it, I think remains to be seen. Whether she really doesn't have a relationship with him and has she actually learned from this remains to be seen. I don't understand. She didn't really acknowledge how she finally learned the extent of his crimes, allegedly, why she changed her mind, and how she's making amends for the actions that she did do that caused further pain to those impacted by him. And I would have liked to hear that. I think that would have rounded out this video and just provided even that much more context. So, this was only like a 5-minute video of hers. I've managed to make only almost 30 minutes about it. I am sure that this is going to be, cause a lot of opinions, a lot of emotions in people. So I would like to hear from you. Again, I do apologize if the volume is messed up on her parts, but I'm just going to go ahead and upload this version. I thank you so much for listening to what I had to say on this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.